you tell me when you're ready.
Oh, me?
Yeah?
Okay,
ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Go, Sammy! Go, Sammy! Yes! 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 Yeah, take a minute. Yes.
Everyone breathe.
Yeah. Yeah. How was it?
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy. Totally crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I have this thing where I like walk with my eyes closed and see how long I can do it, and I never last very long.
Yeah.
Because I'm always like, what if I hit this thing?
Yeah.
It's like, like up and down right here. I don't know why. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, because you go really to the limit, right? Because the brain gets really scared, and so then you stay with it, and it's really wild in the brain.
Yeah, like everything looks sharper.
Yes, yes. It's like you're mobilizing your own DMT.
Oh,
You know?
jeez.
Yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
I really, really enjoy the activities that we do. I love dancing, I love singing, I love meditating, and I love the self-check-ins, and I love pushing, and I love all of that. And thirdly, the brain chemistry is super cool. It helps me understand stuff so much more. It's so outlandish that we never learned how our brains actually work in school. Like, we learned, you know, there's the frontal lobe and the cerebellum and whatever, but we never learned what makes us happy and what makes us sad. We never learned how the brain like transmits signals. At least they don't go that deep into it. And in drug units, they never taught us what drugs actually are. So overall, it's just such an awesome place that helps me become a better person.
When I first came, I was like, no, I'm never gonna be sober. I'll check it out, because like some friends brought me, and then I just like fell in love. I was like, wow, people actually talk to each other, and they don't, and like we don't need, if we didn't have mate one day, we could still do everything that we do. Like, we could still sit down and connect with each other. It's not about that.
What I can contribute is just that something that's so amazing about Natural Highs is that it's not just learning about how to be naturally high, but it's the experience of it when I come. Like, it's built into what we're doing.
So what we do in Natural Highs, it's a leadership program, it's an education program. So we want to teach young people and adults that you can understand yourself and you can help your friends understand themselves, and there's tools that you can do to support yourself in a healthier way. What we really want, we want to inspire people to live an empowered lifestyle. And that's what we call the Natural Highs lifestyle, right? Where you learn about your brain and you learn ways how to stimulate your own neurotransmitters in a healthy, sustainable way. So do we have the vision of a sober society? We would say we have a vision of a Natural Highs society where people are so empowered to help themselves feel good that they don't need to rely on substances that are just copying an experience. So you can come to Natural Highs, you don't need to have a drug problem. We have kids who've never done drugs. We want people from all across all kinds of experiences to be together, because we believe that this is all about having human experiences, and that wherever you are, you have a very important experience to contribute. The importance of paraphernalia, right? The importance of ritual, that a lot of people who get addicted to drugs, actually, they're more addicted to the ritual than to the chemical effect of the drug. So when we ask people to consider stopping a drug addiction, it's one of the things that is hard to give up is the whole ritual around it. And so I actually feel that people need rituals, that when you think of what an addiction is, it's basically an unconscious ritual. It has a lot of the similar characteristics than a ritual addiction. It's just very unconscious. So I believe if we want to get rid of our addictions, we need to bring back conscious ritual.
AC, what did you want?
Just mate.
The yerba mate is one of the most nutritious plants that we have on the planet right now, and have a form of caffeine in it, but very different than the caffeine in coffee, right? It's more like caffeine in green tea.
That's what this one says. What do you mean?
It's kind of like a social thing when you share the mate with your friends or whoever you're with. It's like when people, you know, drink alcohol together, or like at parties, when people have something to hold, they kind of loosen up. And when they see, oh, you're drinking the same thing as me, like, okay, like at least we can agree on that. So it's a really nice way to get to know other people and take care of yourself at the same time.
I brought a special herb, which is an herb that works in the same system in the body, in the brain as alcohol. It's called passion flower. And who would like to introduce it?
We use it as a great substitute for alcohol. It works with the parasympathetic nervous system, so it's really good for anxiety, it's really good for calming down, it's really good to put in sleep mixes. Passion flower also is, so you can drink it as a tea, or you can also eat the flowers. It helps heal the system that drugs hurt, which is really interesting about it. And we use it as a party herb.
It's also super good for anxiety. So this is a picture of the flower. Can you believe how incredible it is? Yeah.
Some people get tattoos of that.
A lot of times the brain kind of creates self-fulfilling prophecies, and that's kind of what happens, is that like when you expect a certain outcome, then your brain prepares itself for that specific outcome and starts acting in that way, you know? So if it expects to get drunk, then it's gonna start to like lean into that, I guess.
Totally. And it was actually this researcher who coined the term expectancy effect for alcohol. That a lot what people experience with alcohol is actually what they expect from alcohol. I was like, well, if the power of our mind is so powerful, how could we actually use it in a creative way? I brought the probably smallest piece of chocolate that you've ever seen in your life. And this is the thing. I'm convinced that an experience is not in the outside, right? It's not in what we consume, but it's actually what we make on the inside. And so my challenge to you all is to turn this tiny, tiny piece of chocolate into the greatest experience with chocolate you ever had. And there is no further instructions, okay? So you are totally on your own to use the power of your mind to create this into the biggest experience you've ever had. And while you do it, I want you to watch, what do I actually do? Like, how do I use the power of my mind to actually make this into an amazing chocolate experience? You can study each drug and figure out which neurotransmitter is actually getting manipulated by this drug. So in Natural Highs, we say, well, if you're drawn towards a particular drug, you have what we call a favorite neurotransmitter, right? So if you're drawn to cocaine, your favorite neurotransmitter is probably dopamine. If you're drawn towards alcohol, your favorite neurotransmitter system is probably GABA. And once you know that, you can study the particular aspects of how to move this neurotransmitter. I mean, even down specifically to what food would I have to eat to produce more of that neurotransmitter. Now, a lot of these neurotransmitters are also moved by certain activities, right? So for example, GABA is released when we feel warm or when we feel touch. And neurotransmitters like dopamine get moved when we, let's say, challenge ourselves or when we experience risk or novelty. And so those are the elements we use in Natural Highs. We try to create experiences where kids have the experience that I can actually move this neurotransmitter on my own. I already have everything inside of me that I need. You know, drugs are just copying these precious chemicals we already have that make us feel good. If you want to know how a drug like alcohol works, you have to understand how our emotional system works, because it's happening in the same systems. When you feel a sense of love and connection, it's probably serotonin, okay? So then the serotonin gets released, and then what happens next? Where does it go next?
It's reabsorbed.
Yes. On the other side are serotonin receptors, and the moment the serotonin clicks into the receptor, it creates a new electrical impulse, and that is what we feel as a feeling like love. So every feeling we feel is literally made by chemicals that move around. And by the way, every cell in the body has tens of thousands of these receptors. So it's not just in the brain. Right? We have feelings all over our body. When we have a gut feeling, when we feel butterflies in our stomach, right? So our whole body is involved in making those feelings, and they are literally made by neurotransmitters, by chemicals moving around.
What?
Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
Did you ever know that before?
No.
Okay. Wouldn't that be important to learn?
Yes.
Yes, I agree with you. So that's why we teach it, right? And I'm so glad you're here today, because you're going to be one of the very, very few 11-year-olds who knows that. Because usually this is not even really taught in high school even. Okay. In our world right now, I think most people have no idea of how good their body could feel in a healthy way, because we're so inundated with, you know, unhealthy substances and food and behaviors that we have no idea how, if our body would be in its healthy state, how good we actually could feel naturally. So we get that feedback a lot, that people come to us and we do the practices and we do, you know, we drink yerba mate and herbs, and people say, wow, I haven't felt that good in years. So it's like, I think we don't even know what our capacity would be in our own body to feel good if we would just sensitize our own body and, you know, become clean and get away from substance use, and then let our body actually develop its real sensitivity again. A drug like alcohol does not feel like a natural feeling. Here it's copying a natural neurotransmitter, but being drunk does not feel natural, like a natural feeling. Why is it that a high from a drug feels so different if it's just a copy of our own neurotransmitters?
It's at a higher concentration of a neurotransmitter.
That's it. It's so much more than the body would ever release by itself. When somebody uses a drug like alcohol, you know, people have these really strong effects of feeling drunk, feeling altered. Once you study what does alcohol actually do in the brain, it's very simple. It manipulates, first of all, the GABA system. Now, the GABA neurotransmitter is the neurotransmitter we release when we feel safe, when we feel calm, when we can relax, when we feel connected. And so then the question is, well, how can I support my own GABA system that alcohol just manipulates? How can I actually support that? Like, what kind of activities would release my own GABA neurotransmitter so that I could feel safe and comfortable in my own skin and relaxed in ways that are healthy? And, you know, interestingly enough, GABA gets released when we feel warm, when we feel connected, even in basic ways like physical touch. So those are the elements we offer in Natural Highs, of like, how can I actually support an activity that releases a similar situation in the brain, like the real neurotransmitter that alcohol would just manipulate. And then also the body, of course, stops making its own GABA. So quitting the copies, right, would be the first thing. Quit the copies. Now, what do these factories need to actually make?
Amino acids.
GABA. Yay, that's a thing, right? That you could give your body the right building blocks. So if you would want to give your brain tomorrow morning the right building blocks, what would you have to eat for breakfast?
Oatmeal.
Eggs.
Yes, something with protein, right? Perfect. Perfect. So something with protein, so your brain actually has amino acids. What would you have to do to stimulate the factors? Yes, you would have to move, right? Okay, good. Okay, so let's do it. Let's do it. Yay! So let's get up. Let's get up. When you study the Stone Age brain, you can see that we are so vulnerable socially, whether we want to admit that to ourselves or not. We want to fit in. We want to belong. It doesn't feel good to any human to be excluded. So, you know, there's so much pressure to participate in the social rituals that we have that it's very difficult for people to, let's say no to drinking alcohol if then that makes them feel like an outsider. The other temptation around alcohol is, of course, how it works physiologically. You know, we are such a high-stressed culture right now that most people spend most of their time in a sympathetic nervous system state of like being stressed and like in a fight, flight, freeze state. And so then to have a substance that promises you to just chill out and relax is, of course, becomes very tempting. Unfortunately, that's just kind of like a short-term experience because, of course, alcohol, a drug like alcohol, does not really get you out of a stressed mode, but it gives you kind of a sense of a vacation for a moment. Every substance, including alcohol, releases a tremendous amount of dopamine afterwards, which means in the brain that the brain wants to reinforce it because it perceives it as a mechanism to happiness or a mechanism to feeling safe. And so really what substances do, they create a shortcut in the brain to feeling happy. Now, of course, if you imprint a shortcut, then you're going to lose motivation to do other things. And we know that in animal studies, that if you provide substances to an animal in the laboratory, they will stop doing activities that usually would bring them joy. Take a moment, close your eyes, and do a body check-in. Do a body check-in. Do a body check-in and notice how you feel right now. Do a body check-in and notice how you feel right now. And especially see if you feel any stress or any anxiety or any kind of challenging feelings. Just check it. The idea is you mobilize your brain chemistry by moving. You push out all of your stress, all of your frustration, all of your energy. Don't stop when you feel tired. Okay, keep going until I say stop. And go! Push against your So a question we get a lot from parents is that they say, well, you know, what should I do? Should I let my kid use responsibly, like, you know, alcohol or marijuana? Wouldn't that be better to be balanced or responsible? Or have kids, you know, drink at my house because at least I know they're safe. What we know now about the teenage brain, like what happens in terms of brain development between the age of 12 and 25, it's very clear that any use of substances will set up patterns that will affect somebody for the rest of their life. So I say to parents, there's not really any amount of substance use, including alcohol use, during this window of brain development that would be positive. So I think the more we can help young people and parents understand that, the longer somebody delays any use of alcohol or marijuana or any other drug, the better it will be for the rest of their life in terms of their mental health. The brain during teenage brain development has such high plasticity that literally it takes everything that is happening and forms it into patterns. And these patterns are not just ideas, they're actually physiological changes where neurons actually bundle up and turn into pathways that if you would have a good enough microscope, you could actually see them. And so these patterns will stay with somebody for the rest of their life. So actually during the age of 12 to 25, it really matters what somebody does with their brain in order what patterns you set up for the rest of your life. And those patterns are not just important in terms of addiction, but these patterns are really important in terms of mental health. And then, if you're up for it, we can do a little GABA experiment. So GABA gets released naturally when we feel comfortable in our own skin, and it gets released through touch and feeling safe. So what you can do if you'd like, you can actually find a way in this web that we have right now. We can create a big kind of like spider web. And if you feel like it, you can actually find a way of touching another person if that feels comfortable to you. So you can either touch their arm, or you can touch their ankle, or you can connect if you feel like it. If you don't want to do it, you stay in your own space.